Hey y'all, this is your host Liz, and you're listening to the Bad Millennial Podcast, where me and a few of my millennial friends talk about life, our interests, and all of the madness in between. This is a long awaited part two of the episode Bookstagram Love, featuring my girl Jackie. Follow her on Instagram at her pen name, Catherine Morris Writes, and get ready to add even more fantasy books to your TBR. I also just wanted to remind you guys at the top that merch is available, as always, on Etsy at badmillennialshop.etsy.com. Use code BAD10 for 10% off. And that's badmillennialshop.etsy.com. And use my code BAD10 for 10% off. Thank you so much for listening. All right, now let's get back into it. Hope you guys enjoy. Where we're at.
Yes. Number
Okay.
4. So, this is the Broken Earth series. The first book is called The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. She was the first person to win the Hugo Award for Best Book 3 years in a row for each book in this
Wow.
trilogy. So, yeah, she is an amazing author. Like, I've read some of her other books as well, but I personally think the Broken Earth series is at least the best one I've read so far. But she's outstanding. Like, I think one of the best authors writing right now. Um,
I love that. That's
so
amazing.
yeah, this one, it's actually, I could see this series is more science fiction than fantasy, but I brought it
Okay.
up on this list because first off, it's just an amazing series. And second off, like how the magic is kind of done within this world, I think reminds me a little bit more of fantasy than science fiction.
Hmm.
So that's why some of the reasons I put it on this list. But so it takes place on it's either a different planet or it's our planet in the future. It kind of leaves it up to the reader
Interesting.
to decide that, I'd say. But hopefully it's our world very far in the future because this planet is constantly experiencing like climate disasters and natural disasters.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh, let's hope that's in the future.
yeah,
Actually, no,
for
let's do a
sure.
different planet. Let's say it's on Pluto, Mars.
Yeah. But so every time one of these like ginormous earth-shattering natural disasters happen, it's called a season. Which leads into the title of the book, that it is about the fifth season, so the fifth of these like huge like natural disasters. Um,
Got it.
so it is about a mother who is trying to find her kidnapped daughter during one of these natural disasters. Um,
Whoa.
yeah. I love that like the main character is a mother since I feel like in fantasy we don't see that very often. Um
No, it's usually like the young girl or young boy who's kind of like either a teen or just like a young adult. Like, yeah, you don't really focus on older people. I would say that's even throughout like different books, like older people who are either even just mothers, fathers, like that kind of family dynamic. They're seen as like the secondary characters. They don't really get their full glory. So that sounds awesome already. That's a unique protagonist.
yeah, definitely. And they also have a really cool magic system that there's these group of people that are supposed to be able to either technically they can either set off a natural disaster or they can stop a natural disaster. So they
Well,
mostly yeah, it's like seismic activity is kind of like their magic essentially.
oh
Um
wow.
and while these are literally the most important people on the planet, they are seen as dangerous and despised by like kind of the common people, and they are kept like within like this certain like very structuredized government, so that they
Mhm.
like send out these people to like correct natural disasters. Unless someone decides, to set one off, which might happen in the book. Much of a spoiler there. Um,
That's crazy. Oh my
but yeah,
gosh.
it's a very, very neat series. I really enjoy it.
I love that. And also, if you have the power to stop them, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, what is the gain of creating new disasters? Like, are they not getting paid enough by this government, or is it just they're generally evil people?
Oh yeah, so I'll try to not get too spoilery. But the
Okay.
person who sets off this ginormous natural disaster pretty much wants to like overthrow the entire system and government, and he's like
Oh,
he has a
okay.
plan so that they could like also save the world, but like someone dies for that plan.
Doesn't really sound. It sounds like too. Yeah, he's tired of being controlled or like told how he can use
Exactly.
his power. Interesting. That is very relatable. Like I'm even kind of thinking of like our system of capitalism and stuff, and how people have to be kept in their place, and it's very hard to do what you want to do without having to listen to the government or follow certain things. That's interesting.
Yes,
Okay.
and it's very like reflective of like both like capitalistic society and like kind of like a lot of the racism that plays out in like our real world is I'd say very much reflected in this book. She approaches it in like a very interesting way.
Good, good. I like that. And also, again, I appreciate fantasy books or even like science fiction books that have something to say that can relate to our real world or just even like create a more ideal world, but still it's like, yo, there's these problems, and you got to address them otherwise XYZ or, so that kind of hooks me even more. I really like that suggestion.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like definitely one of those series that it's very much worth all the rewards that it received.
That's good because there is, I mean, the Hugo, that's like a big award, but I do know that there are like some books that feel like they're overhyped. But if this one is like, yes, the writing, the world building, like everything, she deserves this, then that's all the more better.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I highly, highly recommend this series.
Awesome. And your next one?
Yeah, my last one, I went with kind of like a lighter book. So
Okay.
this one is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is a YA fantasy book, and it is technically within the universe of like other books as well. But you can jump straight into this book. I
Mhm.
personally didn't like the first three books very much in this universe, but I'm very happy I picked up Six of Crows because it is excellent. Um, there's also a loosely adapted Netflix show of this book and some other books in that universe called Shadow and Bone. Ben
Oh,
Barn, who played Prince Caspian, is in it. But yeah, in this
yeah, I've
book,
heard of that one.
yeah, it's around. People know about it. But yeah, this is a heist book with a found family. It has really excellent characters, very fun plot. And I just love all the friendships between the characters and the romantic relationships are really good as well. Um,
You
but
always get me when there's like romantic relationships. I'm like, oh, that sounds so good. Like, I'm always just hooked onto that little part. But yeah, well, this
and
sounds really interesting.
another thing with the romantic relationships in this book, I like that there aren't any love triangles, which is at least in my book kind of nice. And then like really all three of the romantic relationships between different characters are very very well done.
Okay.
Literally all three of them could be like the main plot or the subplot of their own book. But they're all in one book and they're just excellent.
Amazing. And there's how many books in that series?
Just well, if you want like the entire universe, there are seven as of right now. But just Six of Crows is a duology, so it's Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and you can just jump straight into Six of Crows without there being like much confusion or anything. So there's just two books in that like part of the series.
Okay, that's good to know. That's like a little bit less pressure. Because when you also said, oh, the first three books, I was like, I'm like, what like motivates you to read through three books that still kind of don't really hit the same to get to that, that gem? Like, what motivates you? What pushes you to be like, well, maybe the next one will be good.
Yeah. At least for I'm trying to remember, I might have read the first book. Yeah, I read the first book of like the trilogy that I didn't really care for first. And then I tried the second book, didn't really care for it. Then I read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom and was like, oh, these two books are really good. So then I finished the original trilogy just so that like I kind of had that under my belt.
Hmm.
Um, but I at least for this series in my book, I would say just jump straight into Six of Crows. Pretty much all you need to know is that like there are these people called Grisha who are like wizards, and she does a good job at it, kind of explaining like what they are, what the magic system is, and that kind of stuff. Like within Six of Crows, so you don't have to read the first three books first,
Okay.
or that first series. They're like two removed series, different characters. Like they'll mention
Oh, okay.
vaguely. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
completely different characters. So you don't have to read those first three books. And it's also they both take place in different locations within the world as well. So the first three books are kind of more like fantasy Russia, and deal
Okay.
with a different set of characters. And then Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom deal with kind of like a fantasy like Amsterdam.
Interesting. Two places I've never been, but I love that you can also travel through books. Have you ever DNR'd a book? Like, sorry for you non-Bookstagram listeners. DNR stands for did not read, but also a lot of people use DNR as excuse, not excuse, but like as a reason to not finish a book. Because I've noticed in the Bookstagram community, there's a lot of encouragement of like, if you just don't like a book, it's okay to not finish and to go to the next one instead of like kind of forcing yourself to rake yourself through the rest of this author's stuff. So I was curious, have you ever DNR'd? Because it sounds like you are a reader. Like you will front to cover and then maybe you reread it back again. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
So most often I tend to finish books. I have been trying to get better at do not read or did not finish. I think is another acronym that's used for
Yeah.
that. I've gotten better about not finishing books I'm not really vibing with. Usually I will give a book until at least the midway point. Especially if it's a book that like other people have recommended to me, or like people that I kind of trust in like the Bookstagram community like really like it. I'll usually give it until the midway point, and then like if I'm not really sold on the book, or there aren't enough things that are really keeping me like in my seat, like either reading or listening, then I will not finish it. Or sometimes I'll just read the first few chapters and be like, oh, this is not the book for me. That tends to happen, I'd say, less often. What about
That's
you?
good. That's good though. I think I always kind of describe myself as a mood reader. So I'm consistently not finishing books only because I end up, well, one, if I'm buying or renting a book, I'm reading like three at a time. And so it's kind of like whatever is like capturing my attention the most is what I'm hooked on. And it's rare for me to read front to or cover to end unless I'm like super into it, which is why I was so happy with Fourth Wing because it's been a while since I've had a physical book that makes me want to turn pages and like I even I even bought a book light so I could read it at night. It was that good
I
versus
love
like
that.
right like it was like okay you know it's the book for you when you have accessories and then like versus like audiobooks where it depends on who's doing the reading or who's playing the characters. Audiobooks I tend to be able to like listen all the way through a lot better versus like using my imagination to make the words come alive on the books. But Yeah, I will probably say I'm a heavy DNF or DNR person, but it's usually because I have like 15 other books going on at the same time versus I really hate a book, because I rarely hate a book. And even if there's something like this doesn't feel like it's for me, I'm still kind of curious like how they're gonna continue at this pace. Like, are you still like, is it just gonna be flat, or is there gonna be like a lot of books at it's like the very end when there's a gem, which I kind of hate.
Yeah.
But it's like you never know until you finish it. So it's also like the whole like never judge a book by its cover. Sometimes you can't judge a book by the author's writing, because there are some times where it takes a minute, or unfortunately they start with a bang and then the rest is like, okay, maybe we needed to chop some more in the editing room. But
Yeah.
like I feel for the authors who like the ones who aren't recognized, on the New York Times bestsellers or super popular or getting the awards, because those are good ones too. So that's just, you never know. So you just kind of have to push yourself to keep trying. But as a mood reader, it's hard for me to do that. So I'll preach a good game, but am I following my own advice? Not really. But
Honestly, it's like whatever really works for you with reading books, I think. And as long as you're like enjoying the experience, I really think that's the important thing.
yeah, that's true. And honestly, that's what led me to creating a Bookstagram, because I feel like even having a community that's not even just book clubs, but just like talking about adaptions or like the arguments of book talk versus Bookstagram versus booktube, like audiobooks versus ebooks versus physical. I mean, there's so many arguments we could go into,
Oh
but
my
it's
gosh,
just,
there's always so much freaking drama. And then it like pours over from other platforms. So something will start on Threads or Twitter/X or like
yes.
someone sometimes I think people are just trying to get other people angry. Like if they're like audiobooks don't count as books.
That one. Yep. That one pisses me off every time. Yep.
That one, I hear it come up all the time. It's like, well, actually, it is like engaging the same parts of your brain as when you are physically sitting down reading. So I say it counts. Definitely like different experiences in doing both. But like that's like a common one that comes up. And then every once in a while, there's something just insane. Like, did you hear the whole Kate Corain thing?
No. Okay. Spill a tea. What's the drama on that?
So pretty much it was this YA author. She was going to have a book come out sometime later this year, but she went on Goodreads, made a bunch of fake accounts, and then
Oh,
reviewed the
that one.
yeah,
Oh gosh. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that was
insane to me.
yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just fraud. I don't understand. Like, the one thing I feel like people who write should just be proud of the work they put out there. And I
Yes.
think when you are focusing more on the accolades and the numbers and the like reviews, that's your detriment, because one, even if you weren't found out about creating all these fake accounts, like, there's a community online, us and Bookstagram and Book Talk World and stuff. We're going to talk about the actual material and if it's good or
Yeah.
not. So, and I would say like Goodreads, who is also under the Amazon umbrella, which that's a whole other um, discourse. But I will say that a lot of things on Goodreads feel like they're they have a lot of popularity and buzz for kind of sometimes the wrong reasons. Whether it's just, oh, they're on the bookseller list, or it's only white authors who are focused and featured, or it's the same author that's always featured, which is like, that's ridiculous, because there's so many independent authors and publishing houses that deserve that credit and just aren't being pushed to the top of those mainstream things. So even Goodreads itself is questionable, but to then create a bunch of fake accounts, like, where's your love of reading and your love of your book and what you do? Like, your words are the things that matter, and even if nobody read your book, you should be proud that you freaking wrote a book and put it out there, because that's a whole lot of work and sacrifice, and that sucks because now it's a whole stain on her reputation. I honestly feel like I won't be reading the book
Oh, yeah,
because of that.
the book isn't coming out. Del Rey canceled her contract like a few days after. She will never publish a book again.
Oh my god,
I
that's
mean, you
horrible.
yeah, I mean, like
Wow.
honestly, I'm glad that a publishing house like finally
People
like took
stand,
some
yeah.
accountability for something like that, because there's been a lot of like BS that's happened in the book community that it's just been like, oh my gosh, this person is terrible or like has done or written terrible things.
Yeah.
So like
Wow.
I
I didn't
appreciate,
expect that.
yeah, it's like thank you for taking a stand on someone behaving awfully.
Yeah, because honestly, when I think of the big publishing houses, I think of just money and greed, and that's
Yes.
really it. But for them to actually have a moral stance on it and be like, you know what, we can't endorse this, we can't push this out. Like, no, that I love that. Bravo, bravo.
Yes, I appreciate that. And this was also something that was getting like notoriety, like not within, like it expanded and went outside the book community. So there were like articles on The Guardian. I think it might have made the Today Show or one of the other talk shows.
Oh
Um
wow,
yeah, so this became like a big deal even outside of like us book nerds. So I think that was also part of it as well. That their
yeah.
local Del Rey was like, oh shoot, we actually do need to take some accountability this time.
I love it. I love it when it goes out there and blows up too, because I feel like there's so many, injustices where I feel like it could just be stuck in the book community, but for the world to almost like take notice, that's really encouraging. Wow. Oh my gosh. Bookstagram culture is wild. I
Oh,
can't.
yeah. I mean, I'm like I half enjoy the drama and I just half like hate the drama. It also just depends what the drama is, I guess.
Yeah. Like if it's like tiny, like stupid stuff, like I didn't like this character. Okay, fine. But when it's bigger stuff like that can affect other authors and how if people even trust reviews anymore, like I feel like that's bigger and it threatens our community,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you're making bots, AI, like all that stuff. That will ruin the experience of books. That's wild. But thanks for filling me in on it. Okay, I guess my next question could be a little bit off the cuff because you kind of prepared for this one. But I was gonna ask like what's your favorite author and book of all time?
Oh my gosh, all-time
Is that too
favorite?
scary? Is that too scary?
Um, it really depends on the genre. If I have to just pick
What?
one, I would say The Cruel Prince, just because like I love Holly Black, love her books. I've loved her books ever since I was a kid, and my cat is named after one of her characters. And that's just because like Holly Black got me into reading as a kid and got me back into reading as an adult. And also my cat is named Carden, which is one of the main characters in the Cruel Prince series. So there's also that connection there. But yeah, if I had to pick one book, I would pick that one. It's like one of those books that it isn't like groundbreaking or like won all the awards or anything like that. It does have like some book talk popularity and bookstagram popularity. But is it like, did it change the world? No. Is it like as good
It
thematically
changed
as
your world though. That's
it's
what
the
matters.
world?
It
Yes.
changed your
Yeah.
world. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. So that that I would go with is my favorite book.
I love
What
that.
about you?
Amazing.
I need to know your favorite book
You
now.
have to turn it back on me, of
Yes.
course. Let me just walk to my my bookshelf over there. Ah, it's so yeah, this is a hard one. Hmm. Because now I'm thinking different genres. Oh gosh. I guess the one book that I'm not a rereader, but if I had to pick a book to reread, it would be the book by Tia Williams. Let me Google the name because this one made me like actually sit up and like pause. Oh, so my favorite book, oh, it's scary to say of all time, but like the one that I keep thinking about and I would reread if I was that type of person is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. It is very heavy romance. There's dual point of views. There's also disability representation. It's set in, oh gosh, it's been a minute since I've read it, but it's basically kind of set in the present and the past in a way. And it's one of those, you know, almost like lost loves. And it's just so good and beautiful. And the way Tia Williams writes is, it kind of like pulls at your soul a little bit. Like I feel all the feels with her writing. And this is not her first book. She's written others, you know, The Accidental Diva, The Perfect Find, actually was just made on Netflix. Gabrielle Williams plays the main character on Netflix for The Perfect Find. So, but yeah, 7 Days in June is just a beautiful heart tugging strings. Like it's so good. And I think, you know, that's one of the books that did become super popular on Bookstagram and all that. But it kind of catapulted her career because now she has a new book out called A Love Song for Ricky Wilde that I need to buy and listen to or read. But yeah, she's one of the authors I will definitely always read and keep up with. And I even did like a what was it? I attended a book club on Instagram and she actually joined the meeting for like the first like
Oh,
5 minutes or
that's
so.
so
And
cool.
I geeked out. And she's also one of those authors who's super sweet on Instagram. Sometimes I would do posts about their books and stuff, and certain people will DM you or like, comment on your post. And she was always like so sweet and just grateful. And every interview I see her in, she's just so grounded, even though she has like
Oh,
now all this huge success. So I really
love
appreciate that about her too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think did you
Thanks.
talk about that book on another podcast? Since I feel like
Oh my
or maybe
gosh,
I was
did
thinking of
I?
different.
I might have. Because okay, I guess I have to tell the story, but I have been on a podcast before. Um, and I did talk. Yeah, I did. Yep. So my other favorite podcast is called the Booked Solid Podcast. And I was actually able to talk about 7 Days in June. And that's funny that I just remember that now. That was the book that I talked about. But yeah, that one is a great episode. I'm in it. But yeah, also being able to geek about books is everything. Yeah, Book Solid Podcast is a podcast that's created by book lovers for book lovers and is hosted by Soraya Emmanuel. And I talked to her. It was so fun and just comfortable, just being able to share my favorite parts of the book and even just like go through it line by line. So yeah, definitely worth listen. And I probably will have it recommended on my Spotify recommendations. Yeah, definitely great podcast. Follow her on Bookstagram at Booked Solid Podcast. I'll put that in the show notes as well. But yeah, awesome podcast to listen to as well. All right, Jackie, thank you so much for sharing your top 5. That was really good.
Oh my gosh, and thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you so much, fellow bad millennial. Yeah, if there's anything you want to tell the people, promote, do you have anything going on in your book writer world that we should know about? And you want to
Yeah.
say it on the podcast as a special
So,
announcement?
yeah, I am trying to be a writer. And what I mean is that, like, I am currently working on a first draft of a fantasy novel. The series is called the Morgana Chronicles. That name might change at some point, but pretty much it is based mostly in Irish mythology, with some sprinkles of Norse mythology and different mythologies throughout the world. But pretty much kind of the very short overview of that story is When a bitter war escalates close to home, a member of the Vampire King's Guard must team up with the assassin trailing her and a handmaiden who is withholding information that could end the war.
That sounds so juicy. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Congratulations on writing something. Like,
Thank
I
you.
absolutely am so excited for you and would love to extend the offer to talk more about the process of writing. And even like if when you know, publish it and everything, if you want to just come back on the podcast and talk about it. But
I
yeah, we'll discuss that later.
in years and years from now, if hopefully that happens, absolutely.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Oh,
I
thank
love that
you.
so much. Congratulations. I love that for you. Yay. And yeah, follow Jackie on Instagram or Bookstagram as we call it at Catherine Morris Writes. We'll also put that in the show notes. But yeah, this has been a great episode and like something I love geeking out about. So you guys have all new book recommendations to go forth and prosper and add to your bookshelves and TBR lists and all that.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on the show.